So I have a couple of things here that I wanted to just show you. I showed you earlier this loop tool that I made. This is a bobby pin. I used a hollow pen. Basically, I took a pen apart and I put a stick in there to kind of make sure that this was all filled in and had something to glue to. And then I just inserted that in. I used some needle nose pliers and some wire cutters. If you don't have these tools, I'm sure that you can find a way to make this work without these tools. So let me show you how we do that. Okay, we absolutely need a bobby pin. Okay, so if you don't have a bobby pin at home, maybe you actually do, but you didn't know. So like for me, I don't use bobby pins in my hair. It's just not my style. But maybe you do. Or maybe your mom does, or maybe your sister does, or maybe your grandma does, or maybe your aunt does, or maybe none of them do, but you have 99 cents. You can go to the 99-cent store and buy like 100 of these, and then you could start experimenting with bobby pins. What can you use these for? Well, I'm going to show you how to make this tool right here. Okay, so a couple things we're going to need. You're going to need some glue of some sort. If you don't have glue, I suppose you could use some tape, like some duct tape. If you had any of that would probably be okay. If you have hot glue or super glue or epoxy glue, any of those glues will do, okay? So this is the kind of glue I have. It's called JB Weld. It's a quick set epoxy. It's a 5-minute epoxy. It works really well, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. It works really well, but it stinks. And I kind of, what does it smell like? It kind of smells like a skunk's butt.
It smells nasty.
Yeah, like a skunk's butt. It's not very good. It's not very good. But you know, it works really well. And so there's like a love-hate relationship that I have with it. So if you have any of this, you can use it. If you have like Gorilla Glue, that'll work too. So I want to show you what to do. Okay, step one is you need a pen. Okay, here's a pen. I have another pen somewhere. Like you guys saw me use an Expo marker to make this tool, or maybe you didn't. Maybe that was a different class period. Kind of went rogue and just made this one day. This is not glued. I took some rubber bands and I wrapped it around these paper clips and I stuffed it in here. And it's actually holding pretty well because, you know, rubber bands you can squish down and stuff them into stuff, and then they will, you know, they'll kind of re-expand and fill the space. So if you have some pliers, some needle nose pliers or something, you can take a pen. This one works perfectly fine as a pen, but I have so many pens that I don't need it. So you can just remove the edge. If you don't have pliers to do that, then just find out how, just get it out somehow, you know. You could always pop this part off. Some pens like this one are easier to get out. Maybe if you have a flathead screwdriver, you can kind of pry that end off, stick something in and pop the ink out. But now I have this kind of hollow core. And what I want to do is I want to get my bobby pin in here like that. But notice if there's nothing in here to stop it, it'll just keep going forever and ever and ever. Forever. Okay, so we want to get something in there. So what do we have? What do we have? What do we have? What could we do? What could we do? Well, I can use these rubber bands. All right. I can use these rubber bands, wrap it up really good, and then I could stuff these in here. And that might work. Okay. That might work. Okay, I could tape it, or I could glue it. But I'm gonna show you guys how to glue it. So if you have string or a rubber band or something, you could just wrap it up like this, and then basically just like stuff it in here. Get some glue on there and stuff it in. All right, so let's try that. So we need to mix our glue. So if you're using epoxy, you're gonna need to mix it. If you're using like Gorilla Glue or just like a single part glue, then you won't need to do this. You'll just get your glue and just get going. So epoxy glue is like 1 part resin and 1 part hardener, and you have to mix them together because they come separately. If they were already pre-mixed, they would harden. So if I could just figure out how to get this cap back on. There we go. So those are 50-50. I'm gonna mix that all up. That's all mixed. And notice the ends of these are different. This is wider. So earlier I actually took an old like broken paintbrush and I stuffed it in here, and then I marked where it needed to be cut and I cut it off. And then I put the bobby pin on both sides of it and made sure it fit, and then I took it out and I put it back in and glued it and put it back in. So for this one we're gonna do it a little bit differently because it tapers, it's smaller. So because it's smaller at the end, I can't really stuff anything in there that's gonna hold. Now I could stuff in this way, but it's kind of fun to problem solve this. You know, we're all gonna have a different type of pen and maybe a different bobby pin, and so we're gonna have to figure it out. So this glue it's gonna set up pretty quick, so I better get moving on this. So I have my bobby pin, and I will start to wrap this rubber band around it. There's probably not a right or wrong way to do this. Just make it work, figure it out. You guys are, I'm sure that you guys are gonna be fine. Yeah, you guys will be fine. Just figure it out, right? You guys can do it. I believe in you. And then I probably want to tie this off, just so it's not like unraveling on me. Okay, so I'm gonna tie that off. Hopefully I didn't make that too thick. Oop. Okay, I better work fast before that unravels. Okay, I'm gonna just generously apply some epoxy glue or whatever kind of glue I have, which in this case is epoxy, and I'm just gonna start to kind of get this in here. And it's okay if the rubber band unravels a little bit. We just want to like try to get it so that it's like stuffed in there on the edge. So I think I made it too thick, so it just wants to kind of unravel. So I got epoxy all over my hands, which is definitely not what I wanted to do. Okay, so now, oh hey, it's unraveling, but there's enough in there that's allowed for it to expand, and there's glue in there. So basically we just want glue and something in there holding that can keep this from moving, so that where it joins right here, it's all together. So that's ready. So all I need to do is just find a spot for this to sit. So I'll put it in my little roulette piece right there. Just let that sit. I'm gonna go wash my sticky fingers real quick. I want you guys in your notebooks to just write down what I just did to make that wire tool. All right, ready, set, go. Okay, so I have my tool that I made earlier right here. Let's test this out, okay? For this second pinch pot, like I mentioned a couple times, you guys are probably, sick of me saying it, but the second pinch pot, you guys are gonna go ahead and carve lines. So that first one was stamped texture, and you guys notice I'm using the same pinch pot with the stamped texture. You guys are gonna have a completely separate pinch pot, but for me, for my sake of my demos, sake of time, I'm using this one. Okay, you also might notice that this is at the leather hard stage. Okay, this is not plastic anymore. And when you're carving, you're gonna notice that having clay in the plastic stage and trying to carve is really, really difficult, because what happens is the soft clay just jams up in your tool over and over and over, and you're constantly cleaning it out. So using your carving tool when the clay is at the plastic stage, not good. Leather hard stage is good. I like to just start by drawing lines. If I'm gonna carve something, I like to take a pencil first and carve some lines. And sorry, to draw, let me try that again. I like to start with a pencil and just start drawing some lines before I carve. And that way, it's so much easier to erase. Like if I don't like this, I can just smooth it out. And even if the pencil marks are still there, the pencil will fire out in the kiln. So don't worry about that. but I can smooth out so that that's not there. If I really wanted to make it disappear, you know, I can just scrape that off, and I can start over, and then I can change my lines. Okay, so you're gonna use lines and shapes to make a design with your carvings. So I don't want to see you do your favorite soccer team's logo. I don't want to see Adidas or Nike or Prada or whatever you guys are all about. I want to see you create a design using line. And if you remember back to where we talked about line a couple weeks ago, I had you draw different types of lines in your notebook. So you guys can refer back to that. You could use those ideas. Remember line? We've got lots of different types of lines. We've got thick lines, thin lines. Remember, we've got directional lines. We've got qualities of lines that dictate different types of lines, like zigzag or dotted, straight, wavy. And then we also have thickness. We can change the type of line by the thickness of the line. So notice that when I'm carving with this tool, it gives me nice clean lines. I'm not having a bunch of jagged edges. Let me show you what happens if I try to carve with a tool like a pencil or like a needle tool, okay? So this is a needle tool. And you could make one of these just pretty much the same way as I made this tool or this one. You would just basically substitute a nail in there, and you'd have to kind of figure out how to get the thickness to match up. So if I were to carve, if I were to just add these lines, what do you notice about the way that these lines are appearing? Can you guys see that? They're not very clean, right? So I got to go back in with the paintbrush, and I got to clean that out. And they're still not as clean. The reason for that is I'm actually pushing the clay in, and I'm creating like a wake on the side. So if you've ever been water skiing, or if you've ever been in a boat that's going fast enough, it'll create like a little current on either side. We call that a wake. And so that's pretty much what the clay's doing. So you get this clay on the edge that it does not know where to go. It's not being told to exit. So if I actually cut through like this, I'm actually removing the clay. See it go through the tool? So it's actually coming out. So that's what we want to do, and that's why we've made a loop tool to actually give us this, this actual effect. All right? So that's how you would carve your piece. At the very end, when you're completely done, you're going to go ahead and carve your initials on the bottom. So for me, it would be J-E, my period number. You might also want to come in here and clean up the foot. So let's just say, you know, you didn't like how lumpy the foot was. Maybe you want to come in here and clean up these lumps, okay? Generally what happens is the very end of a project is where a lot of the time is spent. And if that's not the way you guys typically work right now, you're going to learn that that's pretty much the way things work. Anytime you're doing something, you know, hands-on, you know, the very, very beginning stages can go by really fast, and you can get through the process rather quickly. But it's the ending stages, when you're doing the finishing touches, that take the longest. The detail work is what people see. You know, it's the finishing work. And that finishing work is what Mr. Estrada is going to see when I go to grade your work. It's what other people are going to see when they're touching your work, when they're looking at your work. And that's what stands out, and that's what separates the mediocre pieces from the really good pieces. So these finishing touches are super important, and you want to make sure that you are looking at your piece and you are observing the little nuances of it. And it's also a good idea that you are wrapping your work up and you're revisiting it periodically, because what happens is, as the piece dries, your window for improving it is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so keeping it moist and workable for longer is going to give you an opportunity to kind of catch some of those issues you might see with your piece. And you'll be able to say, oh, you know what? I didn't see that before, because you know, I hadn't been paying attention to that area, but now I can see it. Okay.